Good morning, everyone. As people begin to gather, I really want to welcome you to our second in a series of S.H.E influences for 2021. As you know, this is our virtual setting. As we pass the 1 year mark of this pandemic world, it's more than important than ever to form meaningful connections and consider the long and short term impacts caused by isolation, changing work environments, and the other impacts created by COVID-19. As we begin today, I'd like to have a special thank you to our sponsors who make this program possible, including St. Jude Medical Center, California State University Fullerton, Crittenden Services for Children and Families, Farmers and Merchants Bank, Southern California Edison, Roundtree Gardens, American First Credit Union, REI Wealth, and Needle. Our first speaker today is Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva. The Assemblywoman was first elected to serve California's 65th Assembly District in 2012 and is currently serving her third term in the Assembly. She continues to serve her constituents in the communities of Anaheim, Buena Park, Cypress, Fullerton, Garden Grove, Palma, and Stanton. Sounds like North Orange County to me. Prior to her service in the state legislature, she served local government as a member of Fullerton City Council from 2004 to 2012, including 2 terms as mayor. A lifelong resident of Fullerton, the Assemblywoman has chosen to really have close relations in the community. She was educated in public schools in Fullerton, including Fullerton College, went on to UCLA to earn her BA in sociology, and then her teacher credential back here in her hometown at Cal State Fullerton. One of 10 children, she honed her negotiating skills early and learned the advantages of teamwork. She's been a strong influence in the Assembly District community as well as to her constituents and families, paving the way for the next generation of California leaders. As a woman, she understands the complexities of balancing family life and the importance of engaging in civil engagement. She's here today to discuss with us threading the needle, navigating local and state issues. Please welcome Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk-Silva.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. One of the things that Teresa Harvey didn't mention is that we've actually worked side by side, really starting together when our young daughters were doing ballet at Lois Ellen, a female business owner in Fullerton, right down there on Valencia. I think she's still there. So she's a great model for women as far as business. But I thank you for having me. It definitely is an honor. And now more than ever, particularly in this pandemic, we know that women are doing more than ever, not only the jobs that they have out of the home, but certainly now in the home, and many balancing teaching as well as they have their young children sitting next to them doing Zoom. We also know that women are accomplishing more than ever. And I think for some of us that are in my age group, we are really excited to see a first vice president, to see many firsts for women in the workforce. But my topic today is threading the needle, looking through state and local government. And I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit. And as was mentioned, it was that I did serve on local government for 8 years and have been a classroom teacher for 30 years. So have been working pretty much my entire life. But one of the things that I learned on council, Fullerton City Council, again, many times being the only woman in the room with many times male colleagues, also many of the heads of the department were men, and sometimes there was only 1 or 2 women in the room for some real critical conversations. And what I learned is, number one, you have to listen. And that is really a skill that we think we do, but it's not always as easy as it sounds. So to really be present and listening to what people are saying, whether you agree or don't agree, I think is a skill that everybody can take with them into their professions. 2, it's responding. And so often in our social media technical world, even Zoom world, we feel like we're responding maybe because we viewed an email or we saw a text message, but did we really respond? And to me, kind of going back into old school, new school, picking up the phone is just essential. Meeting face to face when we can. Obviously, the pandemic has made that tougher, but we'll get back to that when we can. And I think it's really important that you do have face to face meetings. You pick up the phone. And all too often, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else, of maybe sending off a text or an email, and you're writing quickly, you're wanting to respond, and maybe the tone upset somebody. So I think when you can, meeting face to face. Secondly, picking up the phone, checking in, have a conversation are always better than a text or an email. And again, the old fashioned is writing notes and thank you letters. I have a whole box behind me of letters. Sometimes we say, well, we sent an email. To me, it's like really those relationships are based off of good correspondence, good conversation, and really starting to learn things. I'm not super great with names, especially up here in the capital, but I remember a lot about people and their families. And I remember little things, if you want to say, that lobbyists tell me. And so I might see somebody I haven't seen in a few years and I'll say, oh yeah, how is your son? And I remember they're playing water polo. But that goes a long way. And they're often surprised when I do that. And they say, oh my gosh, you remember. And I do remember things. I don't always remember names, but what I'd say is listening, responding. But going back to my council days, I was also appointed to various commissions and committees, regional committees. And often I was, again, the only woman and many times the only Democrat. And yet I was able to be appointed to the executive committees of SCAG and of the sanitation district. And a lot of times I think it was, they appreciated that, yes, I have my viewpoints, but I'm also willing to be a team player. And I was an athlete in high school. Many of you are as well. But those same concepts of being on a team, sometimes you're the right fielder. Matter of fact, we used to call it Bobby Sox way back when, and I played right field and I wasn't very good at all. I was actually pretty bad. I only played the 3 innings but it allows you to know that there's always a role for you to play. You may not be the star, you might not be the pitcher, but you really, athletics, being on a team, staying, the endurance, all of those things are part of bringing something to a team in a workforce. Once I was on council, I became mayor twice. And in both cases, you don't get a mayor's handbook. You're a council member and then you become mayor the next day, literally. And you don't always know you're going to become the mayor. And in Fullerton at that time, it wasn't automatic. But one of the first things I did was say, I want to be able to communicate with the people who call. And we set up a call matrix, what were they calling about? Who should be at the meeting? And many, many times when I'd call them back, literally, not even meet with them, but call them back, they were very shocked and they would go on about, thank you, nobody's ever returned my call. And many times they were grouchy. A lot of times when people call public agencies, whether it's a mayor's office or assembly, they're not happy. They're upset. Something hasn't happened. And again, it was listening. I couldn't always solve it. Sometimes it was a neighborhood dispute or a neighbor to neighbor dispute. Sometimes it was a tree issue. Sometimes it was a development issue. So I certainly couldn't solve their issues all the time. But after literally about 2 or 3 minutes of them being really angry, sometimes I'd have the phone like this. Then they'd say, okay, well, thank you for listening. I know it's not your fault, but I really appreciate you calling back. So again, it's getting back to people. I also set up walk-in talks, neighborhood walk-in talks. And again, neighborhood to neighborhood, the issues are different. So as I moved to the state, I tried to take that local governance focus with me to solve local and state issues. And I have to say, I've been really successful in what I would say navigating sometimes complex issues that local cities can get very upset with. One is in 2008, 2010, when we saw the downturn in the economy, but also the turning back of redevelopment. Many cities were stuck. They had redevelopment, they had to unwind it, they had to work with the state. And when I got up here, it was Buena Park, which I actually represent. They were having a major issue. And I said, well, let me just call the person and go attend the meeting. When I attended the meeting as an assembly member with the Department of Finance, they said that was the first time they ever had an assembly member attend the meeting. And I have to say, it was very positively resolved, the issue they had. And that city manager, Jim Vanderpool at that time, who is now the city manager of Anaheim, has always remembered that and has continued to call on me. And we don't get 100% each time, meaning that we've tried to intervene on some things and they haven't always worked. But I think most people know I will pick up the phone and call. I will try to do. Just this morning, I was a speaker for this San Diego Chamber of Commerce. And they, of course, are trying to get some of their major theme parks open. SeaWorld, and SeaWorld has not been able to open along with our other big theme parks, but they even have more restrictions because of the water. So I wrote a note and I said, let me, get to the contacts we have in the governor. And right before this call, I just sent out a text, they're still waiting for their guidelines. So again, it's following through. It's not promising because we can't always get things done that we hope for, but it's following through. It's being persistent. Sometimes when you're persistent, you don't always get called persistent. You get called other names, but I can tell you people know that we're going to call and we're going to push. But working at the state, not only working on redevelopment issues, certainly housing issues, homelessness have been major, major issues. And I really pride myself in not just complaining that we have homeless, but actually bringing money back into the district to support not only some of our shelters, but a good 3-4 years ago, one of the things that we would hear often is Orange County doesn't get their fair share of state dollars. And that in fact is true. But one of the things we wanted to do instead of saying that was, okay, why not? So we brought the entire state team down from the housing department that works with state grants and funding and invited the entire county, not just my district, but city planners, city managers, housing advocates, others, to take part in a workshop that the state put on about how do you get, at that point, it was the HEAP and HAP dollars, which were the emergency fundings for various housing projects. And there was almost 200 people. This was, of course, pre-COVID. And we asked, how many of you ever applied for funding through the state before? And 0 hands went up. Now, 3 years later, I have multiple letters here showing the amount of money that's starting to come in. So whether it's for hotel motel conversions, whether it's for small housing developments, whether it's for and they're not coming in at $10 million, $10 billion. Some of them are 600,000, 200,000, but this is all ways of engaging with the state. And now they're getting the process and they are actually getting these grants and awards. So very proud of that. So when I say navigating local and county, I really, what I mean by that is certainly getting to know who it is that are in the roles that you need to navigate with. But secondly, asking if you're not sure, and then becoming experts in that area. I'll just close with this year, as we know, with the pandemic, our office has been really bombarded with hundreds of calls related to unemployment. And they are not professionally trained as case managers, but in fact, they've had to become experts. And so we case by case have had many, many successes, and many of those successes aren't even in our district. But I've told my team, if somebody calls, we're going to do our best to help them, kind of the Nordstrom model. And we do get people who've called and said, somebody else just said, sorry, we don't handle that. And we have a lot of loyalty with people saying, I've tried to get through this process for months, and it took, one call to your office. And again, we don't have 100% success. No office does, but I really believe is kind of the old school new school, which is use all the technology and social media and everything you have at your fingertips, but do the old fashioned calling the agency, finding out what the issue is and trying to solve it. And sometimes for our team, it takes 10, 15 calls. It's not just one call. Maybe it's, these applications. We worked, matter of fact, with a restaurant in Fullerton. He actually owns 2 restaurants. I know he won't mind me sharing, the Hidalgo owner, Ryan Dudley, and seller owner, and he was having a huge problem with the franchise tax board. And my chief of staff literally was on the phone with him on one line, with the franchise tax board on the other line, and the computer in front of her, trying to figure out exactly what happened with his loan process. And we actually got it solved, but it took more than a week of calls. And that was my district chief of staff, Jolene. But she knew it was important to me to say, hey, let's figure this out. And he is very thankful. And he has told us he would have probably lost one of those restaurants without our assistance. So that's what I mean by navigating local. It's making connections. It's working through them when there's roadblocks, trying to figure out a way around the roadblock and solving issues.
I think your message of listening and responding, and don't forget that telephone can be the lifeline, not necessarily the email. But I know I do want to comment that the importance of that thank you. There's a gentleman who we have known and loved in Fullerton and missed dearly since he's passed several years ago, Bill McGarvey, who used to send notes anytime he found an accomplishment, anytime he found something that I should know about. I have a stack of envelopes he sent me through the years of just, thank you for what you're doing. I just want to make sure you are being recognized. And those types of nuances are so important. And there you go, Sharon, your stack.
I'll show you my box, or one of my boxes, but I have at least 2 of these boxes, and they're just filled with thank you letters, handwritten notes that people have sent. And yes, cursive, people still use cursive. I've been trying to get people to get back to cursive. But again, and it isn't so much that I need the thank you note, but it's to acknowledge that you have done work and people are acknowledging it. And that's why I say, for your own business model, you said, hey, thank you for meeting me, those kind of things. And I remember that, and I know others do too.
What would you say is the biggest transition that you experienced as you went from local to state government, and the challenge that you might have faced, and what would be your advice to others that should maybe be thinking about getting involved in politics?
Well, when you run for local government, your quote, it's a nonpartisan seat. And some of that's true, some of it's not necessarily true, but it's certainly true in the sense that you don't have a D or an R by your name when you're running. And you're really expected to look at your job as what's best for the city. When you run for a state, you all of a sudden do have to declare a party. And I'm a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat, but I consider myself, if you want to say, more moderate when it comes to fiscal issues and more progressive when it comes to social issues. But people very much, that makes a play. And I was always, and still have been, surprised at how partisan things have gotten. And we really need to get back to a point where, and we say this, but is it true, reaching across the aisle? I know when I was on council, I worked with Sean Nelson, who is now the DA, second at the DA, but was our former supervisor. And I worked with Leland Wilson, and we were able to work incredibly well together. I mean, both of them, they'll say today, we were able to accomplish a lot. during those times. It isn't always that way now, but for example, I'm the chair of the Arts and Entertainment Committee. My vice chair is a Republican woman, Suzette Valderas. And when I did our theme park bill, AB 420, asked her, did she want to be a joint author? And she was very gracious and agreed to, and has had a lot of camera time because of that bill. And I think really realizes, hey, that's how you do this. So I think, but it has to be mutual, meaning, it's easy to put out that do you want to join me, but in return, you want somebody also to do the inviting. But that has been and continues to be probably the hardest part of the job, is the very, very partisan politics.
Oh, I'm sure it is. We do have a question here regarding there's a lot of call right now for local government to have more control and balance the role that the state has. How do you see that role, and having served in both positions, where do you see the state and the local governments can find a balance in local control?
Well, you kind of answered it. We need a balance, and it never serves either elected officials well when one becomes overly aggressive, or, for example, if the state just is throwing down mandates left and right without any funding to back it up, or when local governments, again, want support from the state and yet aren't willing to do some of the things involved. So an example of that might be related to housing. Just use that topic. I'm very involved with it. If local government wants support from the state, then they have to be a partner and actually apply for the funds, like I noted earlier. Otherwise, they can't say, well, we didn't get them. On the other hand, the state has to be cognizant of local governing, meaning not overstepping. And that is a fine balance. That is a fine balance. I mean, an example is housing production in the state of California is the lowest it's ever been. Housing ownership is the lowest it's ever been. So how do you have the balance of when people come to council and say, no, we don't want that, where we know we really have to build? So there's all these balancing acts with local constituencies, but really having that partnership. And we often get our lobby days. I just had calls this last week with a California School Board Association, and the bills that they support, bills that they don't. And so listening, again, I'm not 100% on the page all the time with when people ask for support or not, but I try to really flag it and look at it carefully.
I can certainly understand how you have to walk the line as a Chamber of Commerce, as we advocate for things. There are times that we can agree with the constituents who want us to put a position forth, and other times that we don't. I do have a comment. This is not a question, but we do have a comment in the question Q&A, just saying a huge thank you to Assemblywoman Quirk-Silva and her staff, who are really true to her word. This happens to be from the gas company, who says we've had a great experience with the Assemblywoman, and in particular, a shout out to Amy Ramos, and they are always willing to lend an ear, and it really is appreciated. And I think that's something we all have to remember, that your elected officials are real flesh and blood, real people. Believe it or not, they are your neighbors and your community members. Please know that you can contact them, if you don't know how to get in touch with them, contact the chamber. We can help you navigate that, whether it's a local official or a state official. We have contacts to work with many of them. So thank you so much for all of you do. Those of you who don't know, as Sharon mentioned, she is involved heavily with the commission, leading the arts and entertainment arena for the state assembly, and that includes all the shuttered venues. So she's been working for all of us here in Orange County to make sure that we can open safely. So I know that you interrupted your morning proceedings to spend time with us, and I absolutely appreciate that. Any closing comments for the group?
I just wanted to say congratulations to Teresa Harvey, the Executive Director of the North Orange County Chamber of Commerce. And she is our Woman of the Year for this calendar year. And we're a little sad that she hasn't been able to get up to Sacramento, but we will when she gets a chance and things get better, we'll have her up. But she has made a huge progress in her more than decades working within the community of Fullerton. So congratulations, and we thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be recognized. The spotlight's on you today, not me, but we certainly thank you. So
thank you, everybody.
With that,
have a great day.
Thank you for all of your time today.
Yes. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblywoman. From motherhood to the boardroom, women are meeting varied and new challenges, but they also have the opportunities for great celebrations. As we transition to our next speaker, please join me in watching this video from our sponsor, St. Jude Medical Center.
Hey, I'm Melissa. Today I'm going to give you a tour of St. Jude's award-winning and mom-approved maternity services. I chose St. Jude for my first child because it was close in proximity. I was terrified, to be honest, and then when I had my second, I chose it again because it was familiar and comfortable. With my third, fourth, and fifth, it just became home. I really knew nothing. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was going to be like, and then you keep having kids. They're all kind of different. You have different labors, and you still don't know what to expect, but St. Jude was always there to help me in every scenario. Literally, I think I've occupied almost every room here. So this is where the babies make their debut. This is where you kind of get set up. My husband likes that area far away from me when I'm screaming. Is that bad to say? It is really nice that this is spacious because you bring way too many things. So we brought like 7 luggage bags that could all fit here. And you have your own private bathroom, which is nice. You're really comfortable for how uncomfortable you are. This is home to me. This is my comfort spot. I feel the most secure in this room because I know whatever happens, they'll take care of you. All my family would be waiting here in the waiting room, and my husband would walk through those doors and he would give all the stats first and then tell them the gender, boy or girl.
19 inches tall, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. It's a little girl.
And it was my favorite part because I would be in the room holding my little one and I would hear all my family scream tears of joy, and I would look down and I would be able to tell that baby, you know, you are so loved already. So over here is the Lullaby Button. It's my favorite thing ever because after you have your baby, before you go into your room up here, you get to press this button and it plays a lullaby that circles all around the hospital so everyone gets to hear it. So this child that you just brought into the world gets to bring joy to everyone here. Like, who couldn't smile when they hear that? It's the best. So this is the mother-baby unit. It's where you come after you have your child. This is actually the exact room I was in when I had my first. So I remember laying on this bed, and my husband, who's a big guy, actually had enough space to sleep because I was trying to get to sleep after delivering a child, and he was snoring, and I said, "Hey, do you mind just waiting till I fall asleep?" And he said, "I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted." And I thought, all right, that's it, I'm a single mother. The nurses, the staff, they were so helpful. They taught us what to do with a crying baby, how to soothe her, which was nice because even though people thought we knew what we were doing, we didn't, and they were here to kind of pick up the slack. Most couples don't consider whether a hospital has a top-rated NICU or board-certified neonatologist available 24/7, but just know it's available here in case it's needed.
Good morning, Maternity Concierge. Can I come in?
Hi. So that's a uniform you definitely want to remember. It's their Maternity Concierge. Here at the hospital, they really understand that it takes a village. So this is a free service that they offer, and she can get you whatever you want. If you want your favorite meal from your favorite restaurant, if you want balloons for your kids, if you want to send a card to anyone, anything you need, they'll do it. Here at St. Jude, they really know how to give you a warm welcome, which is all you could ever ask for. I hope you enjoyed your insider's tour. Before we go, I'll leave you with two things. First, definitely have your baby at St. Jude. And two, the laundry will always be there, but the newborn snuggles go by quickly. Good luck.
Thank you, St. Jude Medical Center, for your continued support of the S.H.E conference, as well as the other chamber programs. As many of you have experienced, the strains and added responsibilities, isolation, and more have greatly impacted the mental health of our community, especially women. Our next speaker, Diana Alcantar, is a clinical program manager for the Behavior, Health, and Primary Care Integration Program at Providence St. Joseph Heritage Medical. She earned her Master of Science in Counseling Psychology from California Baptist Universities with dual emphasis in marriage and family therapy and forensic psychology. Diana, with the support of a psychiatric consultant, has worked in collaborative care model that looks at the whole patient to ensure the patient is provided with proper care. She has been a guest speaker for nonprofit organizations to promote the importance of mental health access for children, youth, and adults. Diana is not just a therapist and leader, but also a wife and loving mother. Today, she'll address mental health of women in a pandemic. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thank you, Teresa. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm really excited to be here today with you all. So let's get started. Now, as she said, right, I'm the new clinical program manager for our behavioral health and primary integration program in Orange County. And today I come here today as a woman, also a mother and a professional in the field of mental health. Now, as many of you can relate, right, and as you heard the speaker earlier, right, this year, a lot of us were learning how to navigate a career, a parenting, all amid a pandemic. Maybe you lost a relative, a friend, a brother, a sister, or a colleague to COVID. My heart goes out to all those who lost a loved one in the last year. Now, this is actually very personal because I know my father got impacted by COVID. And I think going through that experience myself, you go into it with fear, not knowing what the outcome is going to be. And so I can relate to a lot of maybe families who have suffered of COVID or known of a family member who got COVID. So this pandemic definitely brought fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. But I can also say with confidence that the pandemic put me in a position of opportunity to do more inner reflection about myself, know my values, right? What are my values? And my why I do what I do every day. It allowed me also to take a minute to breathe, create a new narrative for my life, right? But despite the chaos and heartache that we are all experience, right? I feel that we're in a position where we're finally seeing a glimpse of hope. And so I hope today you feel you leave feeling encouraged most of all. So again, thank you for having me today. Now let's go into my next slide. There you go. So I thought, what better way to start than to talk about influence and people, women in my life who have played a big part in the development of who I am as a person. And also, since we are talking about mental health in our women in today's society. As you see here, there's a few pictures of different individuals who have really impacted my life. One of them is my mother. My mother, who I can speak highly of, definitely someone who spent a lot of her years living her life for the service of the community. And also next to that picture, you'll see Julie Fortune. She's actually a regional director for our behavioral health and primary integration program. She's a leader. I can say with confidence that not only has she impacted my life, but also everyone that gets to work with her. She really has worked on expanding this program and making it accessible for all of our patients. So she's another person that has had a lot of influence in myself. Then I see my sister. So the picture next to that is my sister. I remember as a child, she used to always say, you know, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I think since she was maybe 15, 14, that was her desire. And to see her outlive that as well has been such a blessing. But not only that, she runs her own small business as well in her home. And so definitely someone I look up to. Then I have a picture here of Barry. She's my mother-in-law, who has spent a lot of time encouraging me and pouring wisdom into my life. But I added to this as influencers, right? I don't know if Teresa or any of the people who are here today have had any encounter with Dr. Bartlett, which is she works with pediatrics and wonderful individual. She actually is, I recently participated in a nonprofit organization for mental health for youth, and she's their mentor. And so I've had the opportunity to collaborate with her in that setting. And so all these women you see here, we see Dr. Yang. Dr. Yang actually retired, but she was another person who really has advocated for mental health in our patients, as well as Dr. Lee. And so why do I show you this picture, right? Because I want you to take a minute to think about a woman in your life that impacted you in a way that changed your perspective or view on life, that influenced you, that took you to places that maybe you never thought you could, but that person encouraged you, poured wisdom into your life. And so I want you to take a minute to think about those women in your life who invested in you. Now, what is the first word that comes to mind when you think of those women that you're thinking of now? So what is the first word that comes to mind? And I'll give you a minute to kind of think about it. Now, when I think of a woman, the first word that came to mind was superhero. Now, it sounds cliche, right? But I remember, right, as a young child watching my mother juggle a full-time job, putting first the needs of her children and upkeeping with house duties. My mother made it look all so easy, right? She was the type of woman who persevered through the chaos and challenges that came before her. Now, my mother broke culture norms, despite coming from a culture that gave women parameters. Women were raised with assigned indirect expectations. Oftentimes I would hear, hey, care for the men of the house. Don't speak when not spoken to. Stay in your lane and let the man take the lead. Women were successful when they became mothers, not when they became the next CEO, right? When they graduated with a college degree, received a promotion. But our world is changing, and our young girls will get to witness the fruits of the woman that came before us that have changed laws to protect women, have fought for pay equality, and made positive dents in our world today that have allowed women to rise in leadership roles. Now, women are standing against culture norms, and we see women rising and shining more than ever. Now, I'm not only speaking of the woman in the corporate world, right? Let's take a moment to think about all our women that are stay-at-home moms raising children, but also thriving running small businesses in the comfort of their home. Women are fervent and eager to rise and make a positive impact in our world today. Now, what are some setbacks that women are facing today? And maybe we will see in the foreseeable future. Because unfortunately, the effects of the pandemic have sadly set back women's progress in the workforce. When the pandemic arrived, fear took the front seat. We witnessed a rise in need of mental health services for women. In our behavioral health and primary integration program, we witnessed an increase of volume of patients. We saw a rise of situational depression, anxiety, but not just with our patients. We witnessed it in our families, our friends, our frontline workers, and in our communities. But we also saw the major impact it had on our women. Now let's take a look at a research, right, that I came across, a journal article, and it reads, research focused on the subject of mental health issues during the COVID-19 pandemic is still scarce, especially in women. Yet COVID-19 pandemic has affected women much more profoundly than men, both as frontline workers and at home. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that women are overwhelmed, women are juggling multiple roles, women are giving up jobs, right? Having to stay home to do virtual learning with their children. They're missing opportunities, promotions, and women more than ever have been at higher risk for depression and anxiety. And we have seen that in our clinics, in our hospitals. Now, more than 2 million women left the labor force in 2020. Women are now at the lowest workforce participation level since 1988. Now, I'll let that sink in for a minute. More than 2 million women left the labor force in 2020. Now, let's take a minute also to reflect on this statement, right? It's really denting the opportunities that our women have had in the past. Now, what about our women who stayed at home caring for their children? I came across an article, right? Philip Fisher, a professor of psychology at the University of Oregon, who runs an ongoing nationally representative survey on the impact of the pandemic on families with young children, points out that the stressors on mothers are magnified by a number of intersecting issues, including poverty, race, having special needs, children, and being a single parent. Now, women with different backgrounds, cultures, different stories are being impacted. And many things are contributing to that, right? The fear of getting COVID, the isolation. One thing we've seen in our women, right? I'm not sure if any of you have heard of Brené Brown, but she focuses a lot on the importance of connection. We are social beings, right? Connection is huge. And so when the isolation occurred and everyone was in isolation, it definitely started impacting, right? We saw just adjustment disorders because of the isolation. And I think Brené Brown had a great point there. We are social beings. We are hardwired for connection. And so when this happened, our women started feeling overwhelmed, isolated, lonely, and alone in this. But let's also talk about resilience. As I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 brought us challenges, but through the challenges, we are also building resilience. And we will thrive because women have demonstrated to thrive even amid setbacks or challenges encountered in our world in the past. Now, what are some things you can learn from women's resilience that will help you stay strong in the time of COVID? A few things, right? Keeping hope alive, finding strength in your community, not giving up, sticking together, and building back better. I loved a quote from a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I think it's Mala Yousafzai, something like that. And she said, "No one can stop us. We will speak for our rights and we will bring change through our voice." And then I came across Eleanor Roosevelt, right, our former US delegate to the UN. We call on the government of the world to encourage women everywhere to take more conscious part in national and international affairs, and on women to come forward and share in the work of peace and reconstruction as they did in the war and resistance. So despite the challenges we faced, I believe that women will come back stronger because we've seen it in our women who maybe have fought wars in the past. And so I want to leave you with this, that this is an opportunity for us to build better, stronger, and more resilient societies. And a last note here that I wanted to share. When the pandemic occurred, there was something I posted in my social media, and these are the words: in times of uncertainties, fear will surface, but let not fear take the front seat. Love will surface, companionship will surface, and life will surface. And so thank you for having me today, and for this platform that you've allowed me to participate in. Such a privilege being able to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana, for sharing this great information with us. I think we can all take away something from the program. I know I will take away the personal experiences that you've shared, how you built your life to be resilient, the opportunity to really focus on the superheroes, the mentors who have built our lives and helped shape who we are today. I think we can all look to resilience, to those who are our sisterhood, whether it's that group to walk with or the group that you have a chance to interact with via social media, text, phone calls. We all need someone who we know we can depend upon saying, "You're right, no one can stop you," and the opportunities to encourage one another.
Absolutely.
So as I'm looking at questions, one of the things that comes to my mind is, how have you been able to help young women balancing the challenges of homeschooling and the obligations of work and family life? And if you had a bit of advice to those who are really trying to juggle so many opportunities and so many barriers that are in their way right now, how do you recommend that they really look to balance that work-life challenge and make sure that they have a little bit of breathing room for themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I think that it was a common conversation I had to have with many of my patients, and definitely self-care is so important during this time. Making sure that you're setting time aside to whether it's exercising, whether it's reading a book, whether it's meditation, but definitely spending time to regain that energy. Another thing that I really encourage is support. I think a support system in place is so critical, especially during this time for our women, because they are juggling many different roles. They're wearing different hats. right? They're doing the virtual teaching, helping the child navigate those things in the home as well as juggling work. I think it's important to have a support system in place. So maybe discussing it, right, with those around them that can maybe help kind of carry some of that load. But if not, right, some women didn't have that option. And I think that's why we started seeing a rise in our women with depression and anxiety, because they didn't have that support. And so oftentimes, because the environment's not changing and they're in this situation, it can make it feel very overwhelming and difficult to cope with. But I think with the appropriate support system in place, and also, like I said, self-care would be one of the biggest things that I would recommend and encourage mothers to engage in.
So, what are some good tools of self care or other that women who are struggling with their mental health can reach out and grab hold of if they don't have a support system or don't have someone to talk to?
Well, definitely a therapist. I think that's probably one of the first that I would always say. If you don't have a support system, talk to your PCP. That's why we have the primary integration programs here at St. Joe's. And we are hopefully able to expand, but definitely want to give access to mothers and adults or young adults as well for services, because I think that if you don't have, like you said, that support system, a therapist as well can be somewhat of a support as you navigate these challenges that you're facing. So therapy would be one of them. Finding, I had mothers who were joining book clubs online, and joining these groups so that they can have this interaction with other women, other individuals, get some support like that as well. And so those are the few things that come to mind. I know at this time, it's one of the things we hold back from saying is go socialize, right? Go, because of course we want them to take safety measures. So a lot of the socialization that they're doing at this time, or that we come up in therapy, would be to do virtual, right? Maybe join, I'm not sure if you've heard of House Party. It's an app that a lot of my patients are actually utilizing. It's a platform where people can get together and play different games, interact with each other, not just a virtual conversation like you and I are doing today. So that's been a different avenue as well for them to stay connected with others.
And for those who don't have health insurance or other benefits like that, there are public agencies that can help them as well. I know that there are public suicide hotlines, there are public health agencies for mental care, health care, any that you can particularly steer people to, or just go to the County of Orange public health sector website.
Well, the different, definitely I'm not sure if you've heard psychologytoday.com. Psychologytoday.com is one where all our different therapists are, their information is on there. Some therapists will do sliding scale, some therapists do pro bono. So there are definitely, St. Joseph, if you don't have insurance, of course, we take those things into consideration. We are a nonprofit, so there's different ways of getting that support, even if you don't have insurance.
Thank you so much, Diana. Very important that you realize the resources who are available in the community. Thank you so much for your time today. And we look forward to having another program of S.H.E. One of the most suggested topics identified in last year's program was the need for financial planning and financial literacy. As March was Women's History Month, celebrating the accomplishments of amazing women, April has been recognized as Financial Literacy Month. So please join us on April 8th at 11 a.m. as we combine these two efforts and welcome Leslie Geller. She's a wealth strategist for Capital America Funds, and among other topics, we'll discuss the importance of early planning and answer your questions regarding finances, planning, and retirement. Watch for the emails or registration links, or go to the S.H.E Influences website that we've established, www.she.org. influences.com. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. I hope you have experienced a bit of enrichment and we left you with some inspiration. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.